Boyzones love me for a reason. That's in my head now. Don't love me for fun, girl. Let me be the one, girl. Love me for a reason. Let it be. It's a massive cock.
Hey!
Hey.
Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host has been causing confusion and delight in equal measure by answering every call this week with the same 4 words. New season, who dis? Your friend of mine, Dr. Luke Gledall. How are you doing today, Luke?
Oh, new season, who dis?
It's good because it's a really old joke now as well, so I think it plays well.
Do you find it fun that it takes us a while to get our head round and start using these things, but when we do, things have long passed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, such as being a kind of now a kind of vaguely middle-aged fuddy-duddy.
Yes. Yeah, that's us.
And it's taken me a year to get on board with talking about, wet ass pussies and things like that, and now nobody wants to hear it.
I just want to bond with the kids and talk about how about that Brockhampton.
Yeah,
kids don't like the Brockhampton anymore,
and they just want to talk about the Delta variant. And
I enjoyed their first EP. I will say the Delta variant.
I'm looking for. I mean, presumably the next one is Echo. That's a good ass name for a variant, isn't it?
That's a top name for a variant, yeah.
Especially because it's going to be like, most people are trying to get back to normal, and then if Echo's a real whopper,
yeah,
and it's like, no, back in your houses, ha ha ha. That's what Echo sort of sounds like.
I'm also going to see how much long people say Echo, and they go, and the bunny man.
Hey.
See how long I can get that going for. Say that again.
You can say that again. Echo.
Anyway. Should we quickly move on from the beginning preamble into uncomfortably talking about Sheffield Wednesday?
Well, I thought a joke that is sort of awful and out of time to start the show is probably a good call, because this does feel a little bit like day 3 or 4 of the festival, and you're squeezing your way back into a pair of pants that you didn't, they are already worn and feeling worse for wear. But you've just got to get them back on and get through the day. And that's sort of what moving ourselves back to talking about current day Sheffield Wednesday feels a little bit like. For the first time in a long time, I think we've got to put ourselves on an official news footing.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
Relatively breaking hoo-hoos.
Broken hoo-hoos.
Yes, yeah. Broke a month ago, but we're going to say it now like it's new. There's a lot to catch up on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really glad that we took the approach to have our wee dalliance summer of fun, our wee kind of summer romances, looking at times that remind us that why we support Sheffield Wednesday, and that there are some good times amidst the plethora of bad news that we typically have. But I was kind of conscious. I think for a while it seemed like there was a lot of no kind of confirmation of what was happening at the club. It seemed like I'm sure things were definitely happening behind the scenes. It seemed like we always live in this world of kind of Dom House and saying, I understand there's a lot of work behind the scenes. It'd say something like that, and then we'd be like, yeah, but there's been a lot of this, Dom. Not that I'm directly putting any blame on the work of former Star reporter and Examiner Live reporter Dom Housen. Not that I'm putting any blame on his doorstep.
But you like doing the impression, and it's nice to have an excuse to rock it out. And it's a good one. It's a good impression.
Yes, indeed. I'm understanding, James. Yeah, it's always good. But it does feel like we're perpetually kind of kept in the dark about what's going on, or it seems like things are not particularly moving on very quickly. I mean, I must say I'm still surprised now that we've made that. We'll get onto it, but we've made as many signings that we've had.
Have you started to weirdly get some flashbacks of last summer? But just in terms of this, we should go through the signings. But we made like a flurry of signings and then nothing for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And then eventually we did sort of make some signings, I think, like just before the deadline. And I'm a bit worried we're sort of slumping into that again.
But I think when we eventually look at the transfer signings and what happens with that, it's always going to be the same for the same reasons we're told. Again, I don't understand the nature. I think we're still fans who don't really understand the nature of transfer dealings and why there's so much brinksmanship.
And I suppose transfers will come in as and when. Like, I've seen some people really moaning about the latest transfer and sort of saying, but we need X, Y, and Z all still.
I know.
And it's like, well, this doesn't really directly relate to X, Y, and Z.
No.
And
it doesn't preclude X, Y, and Z. It's not like
exactly
we need X, Y, and Z, so we got J squared, you know.
And you wouldn't go, no, thank you, J squared, because we've got to get X, Y, and Z done first. Because there's no the timing of it doesn't matter so much.
Like we've just signed hashtag. we signed the ampersand symbol.
Yeah.
You know.
Sadly, we missed out on umlaut.
Well, umlaut's out the door, as we'll get onto, right?
Well, actually, yes, Mr. Umlaut. So I've got a veritable smorgasbord of news. I don't know which bits and pieces. Should I try and go for sort of level of prominence from lowest level of prominence to the most important items? Does that make a sense of some sort?
Yeah, I mean, we could have done chronologically, but it's been a bit of a kind of weird things, hasn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay.
You prioritize the way.
Hopefully there's an element of build.
Can you give me a bit of a top of the pops feel? Are you going from lowest to highest?
There's a new goalkeeping coach. That feels pretty low stakes.
It is low stakes, yeah.
What do you think of having a new goalkeeping coach?
Well, always with any goalkeeper coach that comes into the club of a certain age, I always generally just think, can you put on some gloves and
yes,
get in? You know, we always ask the question: can it be any worse? Can it get any worse than the current goalkeeping options? And maybe we need a reminder. Maybe we need like an old pro to just be completely past it and just ruin themselves by doing such a thing. I don't know. If we tried it for one game, how much worse would it be than what we've, you know, if we lose a game by 4 or 5-0 as opposed to 2-0, 2-3-0, then what great margins would we have? I'd like to see it. It'd give me a bit of an uptick. So, I mean, goalkeeper coach is weird because I don't think we've really had anyone at the club since probably Andy Rhodes who's really had kind of like a strong claim to it and then seemed to have like a strong piece in the fabric of the kind of coaching system who the fans kind of seem aware of and seems to be kind of widely accepted for what he's done. So, I mean, who else have we had previous to this? I mean, we've had Weaver.
Well, yeah, Weaver's was last season, and I think it's sort of been his role since Rhodes left, hasn't it?
Well, we had the brief break I think Monk brought someone in, didn't he?
Oh, did he?
He did indeed, and that was someone who was an elderly goalkeeper, but you know, still young in the world, I should say, but kind of past the age of playing. Can't remember who it was.
I do vaguely remember now. Yeah,
you do vaguely remember, yes.
Yep, I do. Yeah. So Adriano Basso is our the new man, and Nicky Weaver's gone back to his academy role that he'd held previously,
which was basically kind of giving up our kind of main goalkeeping options anyway. So how much of a difference is that as it stands, really? Because the first team have basically all been from the academy.
Yes, yeah.
So,
because I feel like Rhodes, we know he had a personal, because I think both managers, both players said as much. He had a personal role in Kirkland and Westwood coming to Wednesday. So that's a pretty big check in his kind of pro column. They were both fantastic goalkeepers for us. Now that we can look back on the Westwood experiment with a bit of those old rose-tinted glasses that we hold for the past, and forget the sort of tail end of things. And absolutely, undoubtedly one of the best goalkeepers outside of the Premier League for times, for part of his time with us, and maybe one of the best in the country at various moments. So that's fantastic. How much coaching is involved there, who knows? But I think there was also a bit of credit given that we were nurturing a crop of younger goalkeepers coming through as well. I don't think that's come to fruition, has it? And I think that possibly reflects not so well on Weaver and his goal.
The difficult thing I think then comes with Dawson and Wildsmith is, well, I mean, I guess looking back to Weaver is how much can you actually attribute to, to coaching? Coaching does some effect. Coaching is not going to turn, these dusty coals into diamonds, right?
Well, I suppose...
And I mean, the thing I want to get onto is saying that definitely Dawson and Wildsmith are of some quality. It's just they've never been of the quality that we need, really. So, I mean, there's the question that we sink lower into the abyss, like further down the Football League pyramid, into League One at this stage. And how good are they for this level? Which is the overall general question with the squad and the youngsters.
It is. It's a good question. I don't know. It's a strange, because I feel like goalkeeping is a little bit more of an absolute. I think at the very top end, there's other things a goalkeeper is bringing, particularly now. Like a goalkeeper is a footballer for the best teams. He is basically like quarterback. He's pinging passes around, and he's as much a part of build-up play as anybody else on the pitch. I sort of feel like lower end of Championship, League One, and probably even League Two, I don't know that there's masses of difference in the quality of goalkeeping, because I don't think the job gets that much harder. I don't think strikers are that much better. But I don't know. I mean, that is kind of, it's a bit of having watched lots of football at different levels, but it's also a lot of gut feeling and kind of a finger in the air. I know there's goalkeeping is very much an art to itself, which is part of football, but also quite separate from football in some ways. I just don't know. I mean, it's traits and habits. The thing that both of them seem to have, and I don't know whether this is a learned thing or just bad. I don't know whether it's a bad habit you sink into or whether it's an inherent problem, but both Wildsmith and Dawson keep the ball in play when they save it. And that to me almost feels like too much coaching, or like a lazy coach who doesn't want to have to go and get the ball back. Like, what you want to do is deal with the ball and get it as far away from the goal as possible, surely, not keep it in the middle of between the two sticks. And both of them do that too much. They give you that second chance. They give you that opportunity. And then I think Wildsmith in particular, I've bored people to death talking about his near post obsession. But like that those do both feel to me a little bit like learned behaviours.
Yeah.
Because what you probably can't teach is reflexes and a kind of innate reading of the game. But what you can teach, I think, is positioning and technique. And with Wildsmith, it's a positioning problem. With Dawson, it's a technique problem. He's making the saves. He's just making them with his... I mean, basically, to get down to brass tacks, he's pointing his hands in the wrong direction when he makes his saves. Like if his hands were flattened out, you presumably would go behind him or to the side of him, but he's palming it back to people.
Which maybe from a simplistic perspective from ourselves, these feel like coachable moments, right?
That's what I would say, yeah. Beyond that, then you've got, are you working with something good enough that it's worth putting the hours in, it's worth making those adaptations. But we're in a situation where at the moment, we have to make the best of what we've got. I hope he can bring something. I hope he can do something.
Sure, but I think that was largely the kind of perspective when I'm trying to find out who those people were Because Munkin, that was the summer of 2020, right? He brought a whole bunch of people in. He brought some set of coaching staff, and then people were then relegated to the academies. People like Lee Bullen, Neil Thompson. I think they were kind of a lot closer to the first team previously because he didn't have his people in play. And Nicky Weaver was a goalkeeping coach, right? This is when
Daryl Vlahaven.
Daryl Vlahaven, yes.
There we go.
Formerly, he was Bournemouth goalkeeper for a long time.
Bournemouth. Have you been in North America long enough that you say Bournemouth? Edinburgh and Bournemouth.
Well, I just call it Bournemouth because that's the general joke, isn't
Bournemouth. It? Yeah.
It's Bournemouth.
Yeah. So at that point, Tommy Lee went to Sheffield United.
Right, because it was Tommy Lee. It was interesting because I know at one point we had Tommy Lee and Nicky Weaver. And that was just interesting just for the fact that talking about kind of reject memory it was the Nicky Weaver, Tommy Lee, JPT penalty shootout from between Wednesday and Chesterfield.
Of course, yes.
And Weaver wanged his home with the spirit of Kevin Pressman, and Tommy Lee rifled into the upper reaches of the Kop in that situation.
So I suppose if we're talking kind of coaches moving around, the other bit of news we've had, and this is more recent, is that Paul Williams, first team coach, has left the club for personal reasons. So it seemed to happen fairly kind of haphazardly. It was Darren Moore just kind of saying, by the way, at the end of an interview or a press conference, by the way, he's gone. I mean, we don't know what coaches do on a day-to-day basis, but I'm a bit disappointed by this one because I think Paul Williams in particular came with a bit of a reputation of having a hand in some decent academy players coming through to first team football. Was it Southampton he was linked? He had a previous link with.
I think he was. Let's say yes, and then I can just confirm that while you keep talking. So I just sort of remember that it was something of note that he'd had this history and it was a good thing. Really, he was a good get at the time, but obviously it's not to be. I mean, I wonder how much extra pressure there was with the COVID situation and Darren Moore missing chunks of time. It probably sort of made it quite intense to be. I did hear a rumor that he wanted to be closer to home,
which is fair enough.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason. I mean, it doesn't seem to be anything sort of nefarious, but it's just, I suppose, just on a kind of a selfish Wednesday level. It's just a bit of a shame that supposedly, someone of note within the game has departed, and I suppose we'll see what if there's any incomings to replace him. I'm now picking through my smorgasbord. I can tell you a bit about this. I suppose we should talk signings before we should talk friendlies. But we've had the positive side of things that we've had a couple of players back from injury. Iorfa is back and slowly getting worked into the team, the first team picture. Same with Luongo. They'll be both very nice to have back if they're able to stay fit. It's a big if from particularly Luongo's point of view. But they'll feel like having new signings, won't they, to borrow an old adage?
Exactly. Yeah. I think, I don't know, but it's weird. I kind of come into the mentality that players get so far out of kind of circulation, you just kind of forget that they still exist and they're still there within the club and that there's still legitimate options to play in the future. We don't know. Iorfa's had two kind of very serious injuries during your footballing career. He's obviously still very young. It's a real benefit to still have him at the club contracted for another year to see what happens there. A little bit disappointed for a player who we managed to kind of pick up and dust off and get for a real song, and then looking like we would sell him for multi-million deal to a Premier League club before he broke down in a very typical kind of Sheffield Wednesday fashion. So disappointing there. Luongo, who I think you've mentioned previously, never really had any great kind of bad injury record and was very kind of a mainstay around the QPR team and probably before that, looking at Swindon as well. So pretty much consistent, well over 30 game a season performer for those clubs.
Yeah.
30, 35 games a season, kind of on average, pretty steady. And now suddenly it just comes to Sheffield Wednesday and trades all that time on the pitch for time in the treatment table.
Yeah. Love to know the story behind how that sort of thing happens, but how you go from being kind of ever present for so long.
Did we also manage to lose? I think we also managed to lose a physio, didn't we? I think that was also a little bit of news. I think the physio who's been there since the time of Carvajal actually since departed. So I think that's happened. I don't know. I'm sure they were working on a replacement because Lord knows Wednesday need a physio.
Well, I suppose that was a bit of controversy, wasn't it, around the time of Carlos, because he cleared out the physio staff and then brought in his own, and it didn't seem to make any difference to injury problems. But I think his indication was that he was sort of being told that players couldn't play when he thought they could, or they could play longer than, etc. But yes, okay, potentially a divisive figure, but yes, we've also lost a member of the physio team there as well. So a strange summer in many ways, and I think we have to talk about this at some point. So there's also been this ongoing saga where it seemed like very few of the players were paid for certain months. And then some people were paid back. And then I believe the situation we're in now is that everybody has been paid back. But then there was also a question of whether they'd been paid by somebody else that was not Chansiri. And I don't know that we've ever seen any more information on that. It was just a kind of something put out there by Kieran Maguire, just very tantalizingly. And I don't know that it's ever been followed up sufficiently. What have you made of that whole saga? I know we talked a little bit about it before the end of the season because it had started to bite, and one of the big questions is how much of a part did that play in the relegation? Because motivating yourself for a job where you're not getting paid for the work you do is a struggle for anybody, regardless of how nice the potential wage is. But yeah, what more is there to say, Luke? Is there anything?
Well, I mean,
add?
We do have to kind of keep in mind that we are under a suspended points deduction, right?
Yeah. So there's this kind of, if we do it again, we will be in real trouble. But we seem to have avoided trouble for the past misses, which is maybe a let off in many ways.
Yeah, and then we had a more substantial one than we had 6 points as opposed to given to Derby of 3 points, which was due to the length of time which it happened. Derby Football Club seemed to be in a whole heap of shit, and it seems to kind of really be very much a repetition of kind of what happens on Wednesday. I was thinking about this morning that, I think I saw some of their fans or the news articles complaining about the fact that they realized some stringent limits on who they can sign and bring into the club with thanks to wages and everything to be clarified with EFL. And it's really funny when you get kind of situations with problems with FFP that comes with the clubs when you've actually been through it yourself. You really don't give that much of a shit about other people's problems.
No.
Really. I must say, it kind of came up and I'm like, I really don't care a great deal. I'm going to be honest with you.
They were in that weird situation, weren't they? I don't know if you saw that. That was, I think it has since been, they've eased up the regulations on them, but they were in a strange situation where they weren't able to field a team, or they were barely able to field a team in the Cup. So they put out, due to COVID, a COVID outbreak. So they put out the kids in a lambs to the slaughter in a Cup game.
Mm-hmm.
And then because they're under a pretty hefty embargo, there are rules to let you. The idea of an embargo is to punish you, but still leave you with a functioning football team. So there are rules within the embargo to let you kind of make up the space to get up to 23 first team players. But I think they had 8 first team players, proper first team players. But what the EFL were saying or the FA. I can't remember who, but technically, because these kids had all played one game of football, they were professionals. So you don't have a squad of 8 players. You've got 8 players plus all these lovely under 23s that have kicked a ball once in anger. But I think they have let up on that since. Derby seem to be getting a lot of the same punishments as us, but at a lesser level. And I think that's the only thing from the outside that I'm looking. The only attention I'm paying from the outside is, well, how come they seem to keep getting away with things? How come it's only 3 points for them and it's 6 points for us?
And they also kind of went around the whole kind of argument around amortization. They did the same thing that we did, but they did it properly regarding selling the ground to the chairman. But then basically it seems like there's that whole question around amortization, which is a miracle I managed to pronounce correctly just then, let's be honest. The second miracle behind that is, how do you... I think the argument is basically that they've kind of cooked the books, basically, but then seemingly they've kind of got away with it.
Yeah.
Going back to Sheffield Wednesday's issues, I mean, there's been a lot of rumours around this time regarding payment of wages. It seemed to come through very quickly because basically the points deduction would have come straight into effect as of the beginning of this month, July 2021. I think something by the 6th of July. So that kind of clarified the situation why the remaining wages were paid as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Rumors that Dejphon Chansiri wasn't actually paying the wages fully.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's kind of been countered or whether some other sources are saying, no, that's true. Kind of a lot of time we kind of look to one of the national journalists who seems to be relatively ITK, though sometimes we're unsure as to whether how much direct kind of information he gets. That's Alan Nixon of The Sun, who mentioned the fact that basically, Chansiri is very wealthy, is very loaded. So he couldn't really seem to get his idea around. There was some stuff people talking about. I know someone on Al's Talk was mentioning how it could be some situation in Thailand right now, which makes it difficult to get money out of the country. That could well be a situation.
We heard that was the excuse the first time, wasn't it? That first isolated incident.
Right.
Supposedly isolated incident. Podcast, not a great medium to do inverted commas in the air on. But that was supposedly, moving money around internationally, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that counts for... I think what little we know of Dejphon Chansiri, I think he's let down by the play. I mean, we're all let down by this group of players. I think he's angry. And I think he's sort of had a bit of a fit of pique and said, well, if you're not going to work, I'm not going to pay you. It's backfired. It's been a terrible choice, but that's what it feels like to me. I'd be surprised if it's not. And how does it suddenly get cleared up? That's the thing. If it's an international, can't move money out of Thailand, and then suddenly the EFL goes, do you know what? There's a points deduction, and then it all gets cleared up. Does the word of Rick Parry move the international markets?
Maybe so. Maybe his deep kind of international stock trading and focus on the Birkenstock market is I think that keeps a lot more money flowing around in the world than me and you know about, Rich. I think that sounds good. But I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like it's never been, unless you've actually stipulated a system for the players to be a performance-based system of pay, then it's not that. It seems a remarkably poor choice for things to do. But then, I mean, there have been a lot of decisions that have been remarkably poor choices. He's had some good decisions. We kind of forget that. I mean... a while ago. The beginning and the kind of experiments that were taken on, it seemed an inexplicably bad idea to sack Stuart Gray and bring in Carlos Carvajal. That seemed to blossom. And we also remember kind of in between the time, it seemed worrying that we were probably getting Mark Cooper as Sheffield Wednesday manager. That seemed to be one thing around that time. So it was an approach. That looked like it was going to work. It didn't pay off. I think it could well have been better supported with a bit more of a look at kind of a long-term vision. I think one of the things around this time actually that's kind of come out recently is the fact that there was a meeting in May with a Sheffield Wednesday supporter panel, which minutes have just been produced. Yes. So that's kind of cropped up in the local media, not the full minutes, but a little bit around Chansiri's long-term vision for the club, which is basically to make them self-sustainable. He has kind of talked about regarding that. I mean, I can kind of agree with him to a certain level, and I think we've gone down this road before. Him saying that, look, if you have to get promoted, you have to break FFP. That is the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And he is right in saying, it's interesting. We talk about a lot about kind of rise of inflation of costs, but basically saying that all this situation comes down and you compete with all these people who have increasingly large parachute payments from the Premier League, the three teams that come down, and it's not increased from £13 million a season. I think that's the thing you've mentioned before. Like the fact that that hasn't been reevaluated is pretty poor. It's pretty piss poor from the EFL. I must say it's a very arbitrarily low number. I would say. What is a decent amount of money to lose is a difficult question to answer.
Absolutely.
But it's clearly not fair when it's in the name. It's supposed to be in the name. It's supposed to be financial fair play.
Yes.
But there's no fairness about it.
Well, weirdly, I saw some. I mean, I suppose this is unfortunately the situation we've got into with the lack of communication, and then when we have communication, it's very poor quality communication.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw some people saying that sort of questioning the truth of that and saying, teams get promoted and don't have problems with. The only reason they don't have problems with financial fair play is they've got promoted. You escape the
system
grasp of the Football League by getting out. That's why you don't hear about promoted teams getting into that trouble. And then you cash your lovely big check. So for the next 4 years, even if you go up and come straight down, your money bags for the next 4 years.
Yeah. And then we talked about, I think you've talked about this before, call back to previous kind of tame, different gravy running gags. But, it's the Dukes of Hazzard getting over the county line. Yes. And that happened for Aston Villa. Aston Villa were impeccably close to being fucked for the next season if they would have failed that playoff run.
We will see the bite of that for a good few teams this season, because Swansea rolled the dice and failed. Stoke rolled the dice and failed. There's going to be repercussions of certain clubs who it was their last bite of the delicious parachute payment cherry, and they're going to have to live the ho-hum life, and there's going to be some. They are going to be in a situation where they've got whopping wage bills and no source of income to balance them out.
Hashtag ho-hum life.
Ho-hum life.
Also, Swansea City, who Steve Cooper has left recently. People are wondering about what's happened with that. I'm wondering whether the financial situation kind of means that they can't really support having someone of his, kind of aspirations at the club from having a pretty decent early record managing Swansea. So maybe it's the time that he thinks that he departs the club and tries keeping his stock intact, because they know it's going to be a difficult next season for Swansea City Football Club. And, maybe he's turned his nose up at it, but which would be difficult to see because his face is naturally quite ugly. Looks like it's been, faced like a welder's bench? Like, what's this chap who, was it Luke Chadwick, who used to play for?
Yes.
Manchester
There's
United.
a real look of Luke, of Chadwick.
The look of Chadwick. But then the thing I was going to say, just to finish off, actually, one point I kind of forgot to make, just talking about that Wednesday being self-sustainable. I mean, we can still give great complaints, but the fact that basically said, well, there's no way to make financial fair play. I'm like, yeah, but we could have actually made it a lot more palatable ourselves for moving on and having that churn, selling a Forestieri, selling an Adam Reach.
Yeah.
A number of times we could have flogged a few jewels to make a few quid.
Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't paid close attention to the books at Brentford, but obviously that is about Brentford get looked at because that feels like a model that could work and not have you leaking money constantly. Mm-hmm. But then they are only they have had a tremendous run at it, and I suppose you can put some of that down to sort of employing the right people in the right situations. Their scouting network obviously works, but they're only one or two failed signings away from being just as crap as anybody else. It only takes
and largely the argument around, for the kind of cognizant the last 5 years of us being Wednesdayites, of being Wednesdayites in the Championship, and being fans of a Championship club that's around of Brentford. And probably lots of other fans are saying this, well, it's not working right now.
Yeah.
Like, I never knew if this was the case for Peterborough, but Peterborough seemed to be kind of like a League One Brentford.
Yes.
For a long time, because it seemed like they had this amazing scouting network. They signed players for, some mild gambles. And then 9 times out of 10, they seem to shift those players on for big money. Like, you've got Ivan Toney.
Yeah.
Even Jack Mario to a lesser degree, who hilariously has now gone back there, which is very
Look
funny.
At the Iorfa situation. If something like that happens, so Brentford, your whole business model is we slowly build, and eventually we'll get, hopefully we'll get promoted. How it works in the Premier League remains to be seen. But the idea, the sort of 10-year project of bring in the best talents from League One, give them a chance to shine in an attacking football team, flog them at the end of the season or after 2 seasons while they've still got a peak of value, and invest that 20 million or whatever you sell your striker for in the next round. So you make probably 15 million profit. You get to buy the best players from League One with what's left, kind of thing. That's great. But what happened to Iorfa? You've got a player that scored his 20 goals. He's a twinkle in the eye of Southampton with their money to burn, but then he breaks his leg. All of a sudden, your business model is now £20 million down, and guess what? The financial fair play limit is not a million miles off from that 20 million that you wanted to put in your bank account. Do you know, they've done tremendously well, but I also think they've had an incredible run of it. I think they've been through about 4 iterations of signing a great striker, selling them on for a big profit, and buying the next one, which is tremendous. But at some point that would have failed. At some point they would have bought a player that just didn't do it. It's just the fact of life. Or somebody would have had a terrible injury, because unfortunately that can happen as well. Anyway, I don't know how we got there really, but yeah, life is tough, and trying to do it sustainably feels almost impossible. But in terms of speaking of youth, shall we talk about some signings? Is that an exciting thing to do? Do we want to do all the signings at once, or do we want to do one signing at a time and drop them in?
Let's look at one signing at a time.
Okay, so first up was Dennis Adeniran.
I went with Adeniran, but I have no basis on how to pronounce his name.
Well, I was going to say I've almost
within my local media to say, and I've got to ask, how do we pronounce your name?
Yeah, well, don't we normally get I know we've had some good videos, like you were admiring the spoiler alert, Luke admired the kit launch video. Please don't switch off, because he will talk a little bit more about it, I'm sure. But we don't seem to have that guy that with the voice that I'm not going to be able to do the voice, but we've had the same guy doing those player interviews at the training ground forever, it feels like.
Is that Trevor Braithwaite, the Wednesday media
Trevor
manager?
Braithwaite. It probably is Trevor Braithwaite, yes. I'm putting things together now. So, yeah, that's where you normally get so how do we say your name? But anyway, a sort of a defensive midfielder, a kind of action midfielder, released by Everton, but snapped up by ourselves. And he spent last season in this in the league above, in fact, didn't he, with Wycombe Wanderers? So seems a decent get.
I'm very impressed with this one, especially a player who I think previously, I believe, so we got him from Everton, right? It was Everton's academy.
That's right, yeah.
Well, no, but I think Everton actually signed him at an even younger age a few years back for about £4 million from Fulham.
Wow.
Such was the promise and the potential. If I'm led to believe that's correct, I'm going to look that up while we're going to talk about it. But I mean, last season he spent kind of around half a season, or maybe it was a full season on loan with Wickham. I think did a very, very good, promising job for himself at that point. So, yeah, they did manage to sign him in 2017 from Fulham, and I think I heard a figure around of about £4 million.
It's one of these that like the potential figure was 4 million, but yeah, 4 million is definitely there. So
But someone signed and seen as like a big promise, and then but seemingly not kind of given any kind of great chance for. And Everton have a pretty decent kind of academy and kind of roots into the kind of first team, from what I kind of understand about them, or at least
they've also
previously.
got a pretty decent midfield though, so it's tough to get in there, I guess.
It is true, yeah. But I mean, everything just seems to tick a lot of boxes with me. Like, a lot of young promise, but then also kind of looked pretty decent in the middle of the park for Wickham in a kind of difficult kind of situation, and was there for a kind of very strong kind of finish to the season, which, saw Wickham do better than we did and nearly actually kind of escape the relegation, which everyone had basically nailed on for them from the Championship. So I'm really excited about this. Some young energy and industry in the middle of the park, I think, is exactly what we needed. Especially we just had continually a very stale, tepid old man Zimmer-framed midfield.
Yes.
It seems to kind of just feel that kind of rot set in, just like they're just slowly turning into stone. I feel like it's like a timed release view from Medusa. Basically, they've cast a look at her, that Gorgon, and they're gone. They're done.
Well,
they're
I think
slowly turning into stone.
I think he brings a physicality, a muscularity that I don't think anybody. I mean, Hutch used to.
Fantastic.
I think Hutch used to. That's how he played the game. Puffed out chest and people bounced off him. Hutch has not been able to do that for a little while, and certainly not since his return in midfield. But so we've missed that level of sort of physicality. But I also think he's a better athlete than we've seen in that position. Probably since sort of Semedo, I would think. He plays at a pace. I don't think. It's a long time since we've seen anybody with any pace in our midfield. I think from my brief sort of watching of him, he had a knack for cutting off channels. He had a knack for popping up and nicking the ball off people. He mainly sort of kept it simple, so just worked it to Bannon and let Bannon play the big pass kind of thing. But he also looked like he's probably got enough of an engine to get up and support attacks if and when it's needed. Whether he's got any ability in that regard, I'm not sure. But seems a very, very positive signing, and what a great place to sort of start things off for us as well, as a team.
I'm wondering if this is the whole thing that I kind of think about is I'm wondering about really the pleasure of coming into this season with Darren Moore. I'm really glad that we haven't. I'm not sure we've ever really, especially in a very difficult season he took over, and him having a lengthy battle with the coronavirus and the disruption that it's had in a very kind of disrupted league schedule within a team that's been disrupted by not being paid fully at times. I think the benefit, and this seems to be the appeal of what people talk about with Darren Moore, is that he's going to have a lot of appeal for young players coming to the club. I'm also wondering as well, I was just kind of doing a bit of searching this and wondering about Dennis Adeniran. Seems very, very Christian.
Well, that's going to be a factor, isn't it? And I think it's a factor with goalkeeping coach as well. Very prominent Christian within the game is Darren Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And to an extent, there is a rarity. We've talked about the fact that in passing a couple of times, it's a rarity to have a black manager. So there's a level of, it shouldn't be inspiring, but there's a level of inspiration there as well, and hope that's part of an appeal to some of the young players as well.
Especially since, as we go on to, 3 of these 4 players are of, effectively not white. We'll put it that way. I'm unsure about
we stumbled through there, Luke.
Yeah, I tried to make a kind of blanket statement about people's races, which is a little bit uncomfortable, as you can imagine me kind of doing. But I think, and especially for someone like that, I think it's going to show something that's going to show a real appeal. And that's fantastic to see, because I just think that's something we've been crying out on. I'm less keen historically for the fact Wednesday has for about 30 years almost, for various shades of this, been, or maybe the last kind of 25 we can kind of look at, being a bit of a retirement home for players.
Yeah, last big payday.
Yeah, and it's been difficult. I think we have had some positives with bringing some kind of older heads in for more kind of experience who've applied themselves and done well, but typically it's not gone very well for Sheffield Wednesday.
Well, we talked about some of them in our kind of memories episode, and looking at the history in the summer. That Waddle was a good old age when he joined us.
Sure.
Obviously, Francis, he did the sort of maybe the perfect thing in signing an old head, is he then becomes the manager. But
we remember the times where it works, but we can remember countless more times where it doesn't work.
Well, I suppose what I'm saying though is, even when it works, there's not that. Bringing in a young player, you presumably it's less wages. You'd hope it's less wages. If it doesn't work out, you've paid them less wages, then they leave. If it does work out, you pay them less wages, and then there's a payday. But for an older player, you're paying them a lot more in wages, probably the peak salary of their career. If it works out, you get a couple of years out of them, then they go on a free. If it doesn't work out, you paid all that money and you get nothing. Like, you get nothing either way. There's no payoff for an older player either way. But in a good scenario, signing a younger player that's got good years ahead of them, there's a potential next round of they may fund your next rebuild, which is what we talked about, I guess, a little bit with the Brentford sort of ideal. But, signing a player at 22 on a 3 or 4 year contract means that he will be probably at his peak by the time that contract's coming to an end. And you either then sign a player that you get another good 3-4 years out of, or you've got a sellable asset. The Chancery era has been smattered with non-saleable assets. It's all just people eking out those final days, and you can't get rid of them, even if you want to. No, I mean, you don't want to. We don't know enough to get too overexcited, but I think lots of very positive signs, and seems like a really good addition. Seems like the sort of player we've probably been asking for since Wembley.
I think so. And I mean, it's interesting. I mean, on a slightly more kind of flair side, Fizzy's still with the club.
Yeah.
We can't discount and forget about him. He's had a very stuttering, kind of disappointing first season, but I don't think that's I do not think that's been his fault. I think that's been I still don't know why we didn't see more of him last season, I must admit. No. But I mean, but it really feels, and it's difficult for me because I think, again, talking about Luongo, if we look at the midfield characters now, as it stands, in case anyone else is leaving, Hutchinson's here for another year. We have Bannon for another 2 years. As it stands, Luongo's here for another season.
Mm-hmm.
If he can stay fit, then, we're going down the ranks. We're looking at FDB. He's going to be here. And then there's Alex Hunt. And now we've got Adeniran. So that's really strong. And I think the real benefit of this to think about is a bit similar. I mean, we haven't made any transfers there, but it would feel a bit like how it would be if we signed a new goalkeeper.
Yeah.
To think that in a certain sense, to a certain quality, we have bodies there, but doesn't feel like we have a great strength in that department. So now it feels like we really have a strength in that department. And I think that's something we've been crying out for a number of seasons.
Yeah.
So to finally go and to finally sign someone who can meet that is fantastic. And that to make that our first signing, I think is something really special. So it really just kind of adds to the excitement of what we've done.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the lovely opportunity living in Chester to go along to the Chester friendly, which is one of only 2 friendlies that we've won this pre-season. So that was a nice thing to attend. It was nice to be back in a stadium. It was all done very safely. There was like every other row was taken out. And then there was gaps between people on their own row. So you really didn't... I mean, what was just slightly frustrating was it felt like we could have done that all along.
Yeah.
I don't know that stadiums ever really needed to close totally. But then there is obviously a level of attendance that's needed to make it worthwhile opening a stadium. But it certainly didn't feel at risk being in the ground watching the game. Maybe bunching up at concourses and things like that is a different matter. But anyway, that's my little soapbox moment. Lovely to be in a stadium. It was a lovely day. Chester are a very sort of sweet club in many ways, including the fact that always around the sort of 65th minute, the announcer thanks the other team for coming and making the game happen, which is just lovely. Wishes them well for the rest of the season. So he does that during the league matches as well. But thank you very much to Sheffield Wednesday for coming along today and making today's fixture possible. We wish them all the very best of luck for the season ahead. It's just quite sweet. And we played basically what you would expect to be the first team there or thereabouts first half. And Adeniran, however we're... Dennis. Den was Den. Den was in midfield with Baz. That's how we refer to all the players, is by a shortened version of their first name, and it makes life easier. And it felt like a decent sort of run out. The whole game was played at a good pace. We made wholesale changes second half, apart from Dunkley stayed on for most of the second half. He played till about the hour mark, and then Galvin came back on and played left-sided centre-back. I thought Galvin looked really good. I thought Galvin looked decent against Celtic as well. I managed to watch some of that feed, despite it being in working hours. And the second half I really enjoyed. We had a lot of pace to our play. That's where we had I think we had Shodipo came on as part of that as he was a trialist at the time. There was a real good sort of pace to that team. It helped that obviously they were playing against a team that were entering their second half because Chester didn't make all of the same changes. But I much preferred the way we played that second half. Hunt looked really a class above, found lots of space and played some really nice passes. Deli Bashiru looked very dangerous and got absolutely hammered at one point, doing one of his little drives into the box, and then it was from one of his drives into the box that we scored as well. Adedoyan sort of poked home after he caused a bit of chaos. But I thought Adedoyan looked good. Hagen looked really nippy. And we looked solid enough at the back, and Wildsmith was really talking a lot, and so was Brennan. Brennan was like ordering Dunkley about, which I kind of liked. So it was interesting. I mean, as I say, we won 2-0 against a Conference North team, which was good. Earlier in that week, we got beat 3-1 by Celtic. We beat Alfreton 1-0 with Green doing what I worry will be his only thing he does in the season, in scoring the goal. And since then, I mean, I know they don't mean anything, but we've been beat by Barnsley and not scored a goal in the last, and also beat by West Brom and not scored a goal in the last 2 friendlies. We were supposed to play Wrexham this weekend. That was called off because of COVID cases in their camp. So we've got Port Vale on Tuesday night, and that's the last friendly before we kick things off in the EFL Cup against Huddersfield. So it's hard to know what to make of, because we've had bad pre-seasons and then the seasons turned out great. We've had really good pre-seasons and the seasons turned out badly.
Not very badly, yes.
It's a bit tricky to sort of know where. So Burner has played quite a bit of football, but it's worth probably talking about Burner in situation. So he has been linked with a move back to Germany for a good chunk of the summer.
Yeah.
And first off, it was around intertwined with the talk about not being paid. So he was going to basically sort of cancel his contract and go pick up again in Bundesliga 2. But since he's been paid, that has complicated matters, hasn't it? Because he's still under contract for a year. And I think Wednesday want to be paid for him moving, which seems reasonable.
Right, yeah, because I think we're hearing the rumours that he's going to be... he is going probably for about 6 figures, which I think is a nice little deal, I want to say.
It's like a nice little deal for someone who's been mostly woeful for us.
Yeah, I mean, Rich has completely redacted his decent half season at the beginning, really. But I mean, outside of that, there seem to be some rumors that because of the lack of being paid, some professionals wanted to have the opportunity to have it as a way to kind of engineer a move on a free transfer out of the club. I feel like I'm fairly certain that allegedly, I think Berner is probably one of those people.
There was
very determined after
his almost handed their notice in.
Yeah, I find it weird because I thought that the whole concept was I thought Berner seemed to really want to come to England to meet up a personal goal of playing in England. I don't know. Maybe it's also thanks to the pandemic made an incredibly tough time if he has any further family who are outside of England that he hasn't been able to see. Maybe that's a big, and maybe it's just kind of added to a very difficult kind of experiment for him. I think really having, I don't know, 6 months of playing among crowds and then a longer period of time playing without any fans is probably something that adds to that. So I'm wondering if that's the reason why he's looking to kind of swan off. Anyway, I mean, if we manage to get some money for him and he gets him off the wage bill, I think that's fine. But I think that kind of brings in some kind of issues about personnel at the back. Should we go back to talking about, let's go back and kind of pick up. So Shodipo, you mentioned, he was the second signing in.
Yes.
Not too long after Adeniran, I must say.
Yeah.
And a player who's, a young promising winger at QPR, who seems to be kind of well thought of, coming from their kind of youth scheme. And
then he's obviously... Sorry, go on.
And then had a very, very, very good season in League One.
Yeah.
13 goals. I believe it's 13. Was it 13 goals at Oxford?
I think the club website said 14, but he might have got one in a cup as well, maybe. Maybe it's 13 league. But still, a tremendous return.
Mm-hmm.
Can play either flank, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like a real steal. I know it's a loan, but it feels like a very good get.
Yeah, feels like a good get. Feels like a player in a kind of prominent position. I think he's there at QPR for another year, so maybe that puts him in a position, a slightly bigger kind of, it just feels really good. Really good time to kind of bring him in. A really good time for him to kind of prove himself off, to be a consistent performer in the Football League off the back of, a very good season for Oxford last year. It just seems very promising. Young, pacey winger. And hopefully someone comes in with a bit of confidence and can kind of hopefully replace what we kind of saw at the beginning from Harris, from a very kind of season from Harris.
Yeah, if we could have similar sort of effort levels as we got from Harris, but with a bit more sort of tangible output, that would be a big step up from where we've been. I mean, it's interesting. He's at that kind of, I was going to say he's young in the way that Wildsmith and Dawson are young, because I think he's 24. So he's at that point where this is really like, if you're going to make waves, this is when you've got to be making waves. So it's probably, I just can't see any downside really. And particularly if he's only got a year left, he's really got to get himself a decent contract by playing well with us, presumably.
I think so, yeah.
And it seems like a great signing.
Definitely think so. And I really hope that from kind of Darren Moore's credentials, I'm looking at, working with younger players, could be a really promising one to sign in. It was kind of a surprise, but I'm really glad we brought him in that position. Yeah,
no, it's a good addition, and I mean we don't have tons of options on either flank, so it's nice to have somebody that can pick up on both.
Mm-hmm. Maybe could be a League One Jakob Murphy for us.
Ooh, can you imagine?
I'd love to imagine, Rich. That would be a beautiful, beautiful thing to get in my head.
So, well, now I'm almost thinking maybe we should just round out the signings, because we also added Jaden Brown, who's described on the website as a left-sided defender, but I think he's very much seen as a left back in particular, isn't he?
Yes.
But left-sided defender makes it sound like he potentially could be a left-sided centre back if needs be in a three as well. Another addition. From Huddersfield, sort of joins us, having been released by Huddersfield Town, our first opponents of the new season, and he played a bit of football for them last year. He played 13 games last season for them. So again, feels like he's a good age. He's 22 years old. He's only 5'9", so maybe he's not playing left-sided centre back anytime soon. It's probably a bit little for a centre back, but I don't know much about him. We're lacking at centre back, at left back.
I wonder, like having him come as a left back is I think is more prominent for the fact that we're looking to bring in a left back rather than maybe the personnel. Maybe he's a little bit stopgap, but I think the fact that he is young and I think he's had a bit of a falter time at Huddersfield, sound like he basically was kind of thrown at the deep end and kind of did well at the beginning, but then he got injured,
right?
A big injury, and then I think Huddersfield fans seem to say he wasn't so good. Kind of following there, he's come up through basically the Tottenham Hotspur academy, had some kind of prominence being in England under 15, under 16 through to under 19 teams. And yeah, maybe there's a chance for him to kind of reignite his career, give himself an opportunity to see if he can bloom here. It seems a very kind of cheap gamble, but one that I think I'm glad that we're making. Again, hopefully with those credentials, with Darren Moore's credentials of working with young players, that could be one that's a decent and fairly cheap gamble to get someone in that kind of left back berth. I mean, it's interesting to think a lot about the young players that are coming through academies. Our academy is the fact that it's like I was worried near the beginning of this pre-season that it seemed to be a lot of credentials given to during difficult times when the transfer embargo was still on. There were severe limitations. Yeah. Thankfully, things have been released to show that we're not on the EFL's naughty list. There have been some other clubs,
including the naughty list itself being published.
Yes, exactly. And so interesting, talking about, you said, Ryan Galvin looked promising. But it's interesting to think about that. None of our academy players have had a prominent say or any degree of a real say in our last campaign season.
No.
Because, two of those have since departed, and maybe to a much lesser degree. I mean, Penny's left the club and now he's signed a 2-year deal at Ipswich, I believe. So with Shaw and Arahide going, how can we really say who's really a promising youngster? I mean, this is the whole thing about this kind of coming into the season. It's like, it's kind of a bit anxiety producing, but I mean, the flip side of that could have some real excitement. I'm looking forward to seeing the first time I get to see Sheffield Wednesday, to see who's going to line up in what position, to see are any of these youngsters deemed first team worthy right now, or whether we're going to get more first team characters in and then basically maybe kind of look and see if we can chuck a few in on a few occasions and see if they blossom.
There was a lot of talk early doors about young, all of the academy lads having an opportunity to stake a claim really on a first team place. I wonder what it says about the talent that's available there, that nobody really seems to have done anything to cement a place during this pre-season.
That could be the case. And I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously you mentioned Adedoyan scored, who's someone who previously signed and then kind of forgotten about. I think he had a lengthy injury as well. A lot of noise was made about Charles Hagan signing a contract. And then the club seemed to make a big deal about these players signing professional contracts, really. But also I wondered about whether it was that and also the local press, because I think, you have to make a news article out of something.
Yes.
Really. And it was difficult because there wasn't a great deal happening at the football club. So I guess the interesting thing for us, and I think all Wednesday fans, is like, how are we going to regard these youngsters?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious, especially with kind of youngsters coming in, Adoniran, Shadipo, and Jaden Brown. The first trilogy of our signings are kind of very young players with a point to prove.
And then the fourth is from Bizarro Land.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get onto that.
Let's talk about the fourth signing, and then I think we should talk about the squad as a whole, like what the squad's looking like. Because we've got those two. We've got Iorfa back. We've got Luongo back. What we do know, and what's become sort of news in the last few days is, unfortunately, Windass has picked up a fairly serious sounding injury. I don't know that we've been told what it is, but he
sounds like his hamstring, and sounds like he's going for a scan to see the severity.
Yeah.
But from what we're hearing, he's pretty confident. We're pretty confident that he's going to miss the beginning of the season. How lengthy the beginning of the season is, whether that's I would think that'd be like 3 or 4 games. I'm wondering if it might probably be sometime in September.
Yeah.
We see him back at some limited aspect.
It would be very un-Sheffield Wednesday for it to just be that short. I think there's a bit of worry. We could be looking at more towards 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe more. But anyway, I digress. The fourth signing is very left field, but somebody that we're very, very familiar with, and it's Jack Hunt. He's back in the Wednesday fold. Jackie Hunt,
and
1930s throwback footballer.
Jack Hunt coming back on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
And apparently on reduced wages, and apparently had options in the championship. You wonder how competitive certain areas are and certain teams are within this environment. You're wondering whether teams are trying to cut the cloth and trying to get players on reduced deals. Maybe they're a bit hesitant of some of the wages that they've previously given out for some players. Or
this
maybe
is probably a difficult market, isn't it?
Yeah, and maybe for a player like Jack Hunt, a player who is 30, who sounds like he had like a little bit of a mixed time at Bristol City. Some very decent, some good appearances and some less good appearances. Whether he'd be high on kind of list of the teams to kind of gamble on or to bring in. Maybe he's seen as like a medium-sized player, even for a player of his kind of background and credentials. So very intrigued with the concept of all these players saying, I had other options, or I think it's been said, I'm not entirely sure who said this, but one of the players we brought in said, well, there were other clubs interested, but I was interested to stick around and see when Wednesday would bring him in. So I guess interesting for Jack Hunt. He's had a lot of time at the club. He probably has a lot of affection for Sheffield Wednesday. A lot of affection from us, the fans, I think. I was a big Jack Hunt fan.
Me too. He's also a Yorkshire lad. I think there's a bit of that towards the end of your career.
Yeah.
Being where your family is probably not it's not something you can ignore as much anymore. If his family have sort of stayed here and he's done a commute down to Bristol City, that is a punishing commute to do.
Yeah.
Being back up north in the midst of your kinfolk, etc., is a nice addition. Because sort of started out at Huddersfield. I know he did go down to Palace, but he's born in Rothwell, so he is a Yorkshire lad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really pleased to see him back. I didn't quite believe it when we were linked, because it's a caliber of player that I did not think we were in the market for. To be quite frank, it amazes me that anybody has a hesitation. He's continued to play a good amount of games for Bristol City. He is somebody that goes down injured every single game, but does tend to play on. He looks like he's had a season-ending injury most games, but I'm really, really pleased that he's undoubtedly the best option we have on the right-hand side, and I say that as somebody who is a fan of Liam Palmer, but I think Jack Hunt is a lot better than him, certainly going forward, and he will be a nightmare to play against in League One. I know people got the thing that people held against him when he was here previously was, he doesn't get any assists. But I always think when those statistics are very simplistic. You know, those like it's an all or nothing statistic.
Yes.
It doesn't account for the fact that, well, he's the guy that passed it to the guy that played the final pass, or he played it into the box and there was all it takes is a defender touching it to take your assist away from you. So you play the cross in, it causes a bit of chaos and somebody pokes it home. You don't get an assist anymore. But you made the goal happen. And his running was it was such a huge part of when things were working under Carlos. Hunt and the runs he would make were a vital cog in that machine. And I never saw him want for a gas tank either, getting back and forth. I never saw him jogging back like I see Liam Palmer doing sometimes. Watching his man go past him and score the goal. So I'm very pleased to have him back. I think 1 year is very sensible as well. That's another a very un-Wednesday thing is that it's a year. In these situations, we normally give them 3 and we just see them slowly like grow mouldy in the bowl and fall apart. But yeah, I'm pleased. It's a good signing. So you said previously we look strong in midfield looks like a strength.
I think middle of the park, I definitely think. It's interesting we talk about wingers. I still don't really know who else we have in that wing berth anymore.
No, I was thinking that.
But then wing berth and then strikers is not looking so good. I'm glad we're working on... I mean, it's interesting to say that, like, let's talk about kind of rumours a bit more. Like, there seems to be a lot of rumours about us actually wanting a goalkeeper, which is just fantastic news to my ears.
Yes. Sweet, sweet music to mine ears.
If new goalkeeper signings be the food of love, then they are.
Then sign on.
And then obviously rumours about Bailey Peacock Farrell, the former promising Leeds youngster goalkeeper who's middled his way to Burnley and then doesn't seem to be doing much. I think we seem to kind of be an early sounding out about whether that would be possible, but that would be a really great acquisition if we could pull that off. I think we're probably going to be gazumped by a second-tier side.
Yeah, I'd be amazed if it's Bailey Peacock. I'd be stunned if it was him. And I mean, that would be... I don't know. I mean, that would be a magnificent signing on a level that you just can't. Anyway, I just don't. I don't think it's even worth thinking about because, I just cannot see it happening. A current full international first choice for his country coming to a League One club just feels very, very unlikely. Although I know he doesn't play for his club very often, that's more to do with the fact that Burnley have an embarrassment of riches at goalkeeper. I like that we've been linked with a goalkeeper. Do you feel like goalkeeper is, for me, would be a priority? I think it could be a difference between having an okay season and having a very worrying season. Up top is interesting because I think I've previously been on board with the we really need a lot of support up top. And I do have to say, Patterson has looked really, really bad in these friendlies, by and large. He's really struggled, but we know he can. So there was a good post. Apologies to the poster, but because I haven't remembered who posted it. But there was a post on Al's Talk, and I was just nodding along, reading it, and actually, Windass, if he stays and gets fit, I would be surprised if he doesn't make 10, 15 goals.
Oh, yeah.
For the season. So if Windass gets 10, 15 goals, and Patterson did he get 9 or 10 last season? Yeah,
he had some real purple patches of form, didn't he?
But if he can get 10 in the Championship, I've no doubt he'll get 10 in League One. So between them, if you've got 25, 30 goals, that's not a huge amount more goals to look for.
No.
And Luongo will get a handful. If he plays, Luongo will get a handful. you've got to think Iorfa and Dunkley will chip in a way that we've not seen defenders chip in for a long, long time.
Shadipo?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put him down for 5 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's a. It starts to feel like goals are not our main worry. I'd like to see. I think we do probably need 1 or 2 more bodies, because you've always got to think about, runs of games and injuries and things like that. But it sort of turned my head, because I'd been feeling quite worried about goals. And then if you look at the goals we have in the team, it's a bit of a brighter prospect than I'd kind of accounted for. How do you feel about that sort of side of things?
I guess so. I think we just, I don't know. It still feels that mentality of like, we do really want those proven characters to show that they can come forward. And it's not like there's been any great promising youngsters who we think that should really stick around and keep doing their stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. Because it's again that question of like, how good are the youngsters we have? We don't really know. How good are the players that we currently have at a lower level?
Yeah.
Like, are Dawson and Wildsmith good enough for League One? I feel like some sense they could be, but I'd rather not test these hypotheses.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, those 2 goalkeepers have had their chances. We can't do anything about the fact that Dawson was given a 4-year deal. If we've got room in the budget, I'd really love to see a first-team goalkeeper come in, because neither of them are anywhere near good enough. Mm-hmm. And I know levels are different, but what that presumes is that strikers are so much better in the Championship that they are asking things of goalkeepers that will not be asked of them in League One. And I think the mistakes that our goalkeepers make are so fundamental. It's not going to be easier in League One for them. If somebody shoots on your goal with any level of pace and power and you palm it to the penalty spot, I think they can do that in League One just as well as they can do it in the Championship. There'll be players that can take a shot from the edge of the box and get it on target. Mm. And there'll be players that get in behind our back 4, and if you stand behind your near goalpost and let them shoot at the hole of the goal, they're going to hit the rest of the goal. They've got 80% of the goal to hit that you can't simply defend. You can't possibly defend. So I just feel like those issues are not going to go away. Communication, who knows? We don't hear them we don't really hear them doing the organising. I don't. Yeah, I think that there's differences in the the field of play, tactics, fitness levels, discipline, etc., etc. I think there are genuine differences for players who are defenders. I think defenders get found out because it's like you tend to be more like one thing or another. Like you're a quick guy or a good guy in League One, and so as a defender, it's like okay, they're not going to be both. They're not going to be a quick good guy. And that's what would give me headaches. So therefore you get away with being a Rob Jones type heading merchant. And if it's a quick guy, then I stand off a bit and block him as he tries to run past me. I just feel a goalkeeper, I don't know that there's that same difference. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I would not profess to be an expert at all. And in particular, no expertise in goalkeeping whatsoever. But I feel like those shifts in the type of game that people are playing and the quality of game that people are playing, I don't know that applies to goalkeeper in quite the same way. They're still going to be bad at kicking.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows?
I'm just hoping we can get some word from them before they see out their lengthy Sheffield Wednesday contracts.
Yeah, well, Wildsmith's only got this year, hasn't he? I think.
That's true. That's something at least.
That's good. We'll get to say Chino at the end of that. I don't believe in fairy stories. I just don't think at 25 you're suddenly going to get good. Maybe there's improvements. There's slight, I'd love it if Basso comes in and goes, do you know what? You need to do X, Y, and Z, and suddenly they turn a corner. Nobody would be happier than me. I just really struggle to see it. It's like something out of Disney. They would have to I don't know, make a deal with Ursula or something to suddenly get good. I can save like a real boy. Yes, you can, but your soul will be forever in this conch shell. Do you think we need some help in defence? Do you think we're a bit short in the middle of centre back?
That's it. I think that's the interesting thing. Looking at all those signings, though, is a bit like I don't know. Especially like you bring Jack Hunt in, and then you bring a new left back in. Does that mean Liam Palmer's going to be a centre back now?
Maybe in a 3, he's very good.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I suppose Brennan is a decent prospect at centre back as well.
Mm-hmm.
We do sort of forget about him. I was really impressed at how much talking he was doing, ordering people about. It was nice to see from a young whippersnapper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking. I mean, what else do we have to cover here? Oh well, we've got the new kits.
I think the final thing we could talk about is probably the new kits, isn't it? That probably sums up everything we've got.
Well, I feel like the last thing we should talk about is Sam Hutchinson's hair.
Okay. You want to talk about that and we'll talk about the new kits and we'll finish off?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
What do you think of Sam Hutchinson's new hair?
It's fugly. I really, really, really don't. I don't know. Sure, does it ever work for anybody doing the bleach blonde? Any men, unless you've got like long flowing locks.
Well, obviously, like Gaza, it was quite iconic, wasn't it?
I was watching the very, very awful Netflix dating show Sexy Beasts. Have you seen Sexy Beasts?
I know of it. I haven't seen it.
So the first episode I watched, and basically it's a woman who's having a really difficult problem finding someone because she's a 6-foot attractive model in New York. Okay. Which must be really difficult for her.
Yeah, awful. Yeah.
And then they had a number of these suitors, and she chose this guy who she seemed to have a lot of chemistry with. Blah 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 blah. And then it's like revealed, and she's like, "Oh, you're so attractive." I'm like, he looks like a lion who's had a stroke. He had this lengthy kind of blonde crap hair. And I'm like, I think if you had like that lengthy hair, if you had that much hair, and you can like twirl it around like you're some Tarzan, then that's fine. Do you like how I said Tarzan? Tarzan.
Tarzan, yeah.
Tarzan.
Like a Jewish gentleman.
Tarzan. Armin Tarzanrian.
Yes, exactly.
So I think for someone like him, even though I was like staggered that she thought he was an attractive man, because like I said, it looked like a real foppy dolt. I don't see why anyone would want to any men would want to do a bleach blonde, especially with that short haircut. And especially in football, it has that real connection to Gaza, doesn't it? In Euro 96.
It does.
Which again was like the lazy kind of penmanship that happened in the Euros with Phil Foden.
I think Foden was trying to say, like, I'm basically Gaza.
Yeah.
Which he's not. No. But it's what he's trying to say.
But there was a lot of delusions of grandeur, even for a team that was talented enough to reach the Euro finals. Like, was it the Yorkshire Pirlo is the term given to Calvin Phillips?
Yes.
And which my eldest brother Andy proclaimed that anyone who's ever seen Pirlo played would never make that analogy.
Oh, it's so distasteful.
And very, very crassly just called him Yorkshire pudding instead of Yorkshire Pirlo.
Oh, Pirlo was just, yes. Pirlo was peerless.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, even when he was like 40, just wandering around with a cigar on, just unbelievably great player. Yeah, nonsense too.
So anyway, I thought Sam Hutchinson's haircut was very bad. What did you think about it, Rick?
Yes, me too.
Okay, we're in agreement.
A weird choice. He's a bit of an odd chap, is our Sam, I think, slightly.
Yeah. Should we move on to let's move on to the final topic, which we might differ on the spectrum of opinions on, which is new kit. New kit who dis?
New kit who dis? Well, I mean, so first off, the elevate is gone.
Elevator's gone. Yes.
The shapely bottom will no longer be part of our half times.
Yeah, much disappointment for Paddy from New York Owls. I did reach out and offer our condolences. That we weren't seeing any jiggly ladies botty on half time.
But to replace that, Italian style meets Sheffield steel once again.
Exactly. We're gonna get on our moped and zip down to Hillsborough.
Ciao Bella.
Is that getting tram? No, get on my fucking moped. But I would like to just I don't know. No, that would be if I turn the engine off, I could grab onto the back of it a bit like Marty McFly, and head down to Middlewood on that.
So
don't need a credit card to ride that tram, Rich.
Oh, very good. It's the power of Macron.
Yeah. So, and then also you're pleased. You're probably really pleased now, Rich, because we don't have the whole thing with. We no longer have the thing that you were saying, which you kind of feared, was that it was going to be the old. You really feared it was going to be that crap pre-season kit.
Our crap pre-season kit with the jaggy stripes.
The jaggy stripes, yeah.
Is so okay. Well, now I wonder what. Now I maybe know where we're going. So we've got the new home kit, new away kit, and one goalkeeping jersey. Mm-hmm. I think two of them are not bad, and the third I'm really not particularly happy with.
All right.
We're dancing around this.
Can we talk about the thing I really enjoyed was I thought whoever Wednesday are hiring for the media, I think it's Lens Go or Lens to Go visual media. I thought they did a very, very good job with the media release. I've watched it a few times because I quite enjoy it, I must admit.
It's pretty good.
I thought it was a really crisp little minute and a half segment with, and then them trying to do like a big work to kind of involve like a local brand, like a local band with the Sherlocks, and kind of involve them, who clearly seem to be certain degrees of them Wednesdayites, which is nice.
And it's tram lines as well.
So it's tram lines. It's around then. It's very well timed. They recorded it at Steelyard Kelham, which I've never been because it's been a long time since I've been. It's a bit trendy, like an indie bar down there.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's good. It's really good. It's really crisp. We get to have the hilarious bits. There's so many bits I really enjoy watching for the comedy, like Andre Green and Liam Palmer listlessly looking up like they're gonna, like if you saw them across the bar and you just you made eyes at them and they look up to be like they're gonna bang you out for looking at them and their new Wednesday threads. That's what it kind of felt like. And I loved Andre Green listlessly tapping his badge. That was nice. I also like the bit where I think the band are playing and then it cuts to Dawson and Wildsmith sitting down. And then they kind of get up like two big lanky apes to kind of strut towards the camera in slow motion. There's a lot of things I really enjoyed. I love the bit where they did the Sherlocks are playing and then they cut back to two of them, the drummer and the lead guitarist singer, wearing the Wednesday home and away kit. That was a lovely switch. That was a nice bit of editing. There's a bit where Liam Palmer pushes the camera away.
Yes.
Like he's offended at you looking at him in his Wednesday shirt. It was brilliantly, it's really well done, but also brilliantly tosh as well, which I think all naturally are a bit tosh. I think that's kind of some of the enjoyment that kind of comes with them.
Yeah.
So really enjoyed that. Kits wise, what do I think? Yeah, I'd say probably, I think I'd probably maybe agree with you on your kind of recommendation.
But then we don't know which one. So, okay. So what I'm less keen on is the home shirt.
Interesting. Okay.
I think the stripes are too small.
Well, the stripes are uneven, aren't they? Is that right?
Are they?
I think they're very slightly uneven.
Even worse.
You know what I like with the home shirt? I think it's the same design as that kind of weird, kind of polygamy. Yeah.
It says have multiple wives.
Big old swinger key party that's going on with the design in the middle of the stripes. That's what I like.
We're all swingers, aren't we?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the white stripes are bigger than the blue stripes.
It's slightly off, and then you're going on to the sleeves, which is a big contentious sleeves thing to have the full block blue.
Blue sleeves.
I don't think it's sometimes too bad. I remember there's been Wednesday kits I've liked with blue sleeves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who get upset about the back of them.
Yeah. It looks better on Dunkley. I suppose if you're absolutely built like Dunkley is, the sleeves look much better on Dunkley than they do on Palmer. So you just have to be hench and then you can pull it off.
Be well hench.
Be well hench. He's got some big beefy biceps, is Dunkers. The big boy. Just admiring Shea Dunkley's physique.
Do you wake it?
The away kit. Do you not like it?
I think I have like flashbacks to the fact that we've taken the piss out of Sheffield United for being the pigs and having the away shirt. I'm aware of the kind of context, and they would fervently argue without any kind of great reason behind it that we're the pigs, so that we've got like a pink away shirt.
Yeah.
I just thought it was more hilarious with United because it's like the main shirt is red and white. Pink is directly next to red in the colour scheme. It's not an away change whatsoever. We're going to play Man United. Okay, Man United at home. We're going to play in pink. That's such a bad contrast. I don't know. I think we should just basically have something a bit similar to... We should just declare what a colour, or maybe a colour palette of away kits are going to be, and we just rotate around those with different variants every year. I don't know, away kits do give us something a bit different, but I think I miss some of the classic stuff like... I'd miss a yellow. I think we need a yellow away kit.
It's been a long time since a decent yellow one, I think.
Can we just have a callback to the is it 1990, is it 91, 92 or 1990, 91 with the yellow with the light blue collar? Can we just have that back?
Well, I sort of feel like, I feel like yellow, black and white is the kind of classic. And then if you want to change up, I feel like we've had some good orange kits in the past. This is a bit different. I kind of like the away kit. I think it looks like a Palermo kit, doesn't it, basically? But I don't mind it as a one-off. Apparently, they all feature a stylish Korean neck.
That's fantastic.
Shirts also feature stylish Korean neck, button-down collar, and will be on sale with a classic sponsor-free frontage because we can't get a sponsor. We can't get a sponsor printed on them in time. They don't say that bit in the press release. Korean neck. Who knew? And then the goalkeeper's jersey's fine, just fine.
It's fine. It's nice and orange. I like that. Yeah. I think I prefer an orange away kit.
Cam Dawson always has a bit of sort of competition winner energy,
which we recognise as I've had that plenty of times before.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then obviously Wildsmith looks like he should be in the band with his lovely long flowing locks.
Should be picking up. He should be picking up bass guitar for him. Shall I pick up bass, lads? Do you want a second bass player? Yeah, and there we go.
There we go. That's our John Craven's news roundup for this summer. So we're going to be back with predictions next week, Luke. And we're hoping in the meantime we may have a bit more of a feel for what the squad looks like, because it still feels like there's a bit of work to do.
Yeah.
I just, like I say, it does feel a bit like, I feel like that was the case last summer, whereas we were like entered the season with a fairly unfinished looking squad, and I think we made like 3 signings or 4 signings on deadline day, didn't we?
Pretty much, yeah. It'll probably be the same case again.
Yeah. So it might be predictions with a caveat, but we'll persevere. So yeah, season 3 of Different Gravy is kicked off well and truly.
Yep.
I think that's probably it for us.
That sounds good.
Cheerio, folks. Look after yourselves.
Thanks, Rich. See you, bye.